Week one came and went, and the NFC North is 0-1 all across the board. The Bears got embarrassed, something that Max and I expect, and we'll get into a moment here. Packers got embarrassed, something no one expected. The Vikings are the Vikings, and the Lions are going to line. What's up, guys? Welcome to Fireside Bears. Usayd, Kosho, Max Smith here. You can follow us on Twitter at Max Smith ESM and at Usayd Kosho. Check out Fireside Bears on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Fireside Bears. What's going on, man?
Yeah, that was, it's prime time. Bears always disappoint on national television. Nothing is new. Every time I see Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, I know we're going to have a bad game. I've known that since I was a kid. So not surprised. This is nothing new. There were, as you said, things across week one, across the league that were surprising, such as Aaron Rodgers staying in Hawaii. And there were some good things to take away from this performance as well, but I think there's just too many bad things to overlook. So we're going to talk about exactly what went wrong from the defensive to the offensive side of the ball. We're going to move into a discussion about Andy Dalton, what we liked, what we saw, what we didn't like, which will naturally progress us into a conversation about exactly what Nagy is doing with Justin Fields, and potentially we see Justin starting sooner than week 4.
Let's break it down. And it's weird because the game hasn't even been over for 24 hours, more like 17, 18, 19 hours at this point that we're recording this. Everyone always talks about week one is overreaction season in the NFL. It's the overreaction week. I mean, your team does really good and everyone overreacts. Your team does really bad, everyone overreacts. If you're a Bears fan and if you've been following this channel throughout this summer, you've followed all our work at Fireside Bears, whatever the case may be, you know that there's not really any sort of overreaction because everything that you saw on Sunday night was exactly what the Bears have been in 2019 and 2020. I mean, we're talking about an offense that had, I want to say like 8 total possessions, controlled the ball for 35 minutes, and just struggled mightily. But before we get into the offense, man, I mean, let's break this defense down first because the Bears defense, Ryan Pace was like, hey, it's a strength. Everyone thought that this defense was going to be due for a bounce back here. Now, there's always 16 more games to go, but the whole there's 16 more games to go argument can be applied for any team across the league, even the Green Bay Packers. So, yes, I'm implying and saying the Packers could finish 16-1 and make a deep run in the playoffs because they have Aaron Rodgers on their roster. But also, I mean, the Bears defense stunk it up. Eddie Jackson to Sean Gibson looked more like guys that should be working at Home Depot and are third stringers on a preseason roster. I mean, the pass rush throughout the day was not as good as anyone expected it to be, which really exposed a lot of holes in the secondary. I think right now, if I had to rank the top 3 defensive players from that Sunday night performance, I mean, I would go with Akeem Hicks and then Khalil Mack and probably Jalen Johnson or Roquan Smith.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be Roquan Smith. Akeem Hicks had a good game. Really came away with the only shining piece of defense that we saw that entire game. In Jalen Johnson as well. This was not a good start to Sean Desai's career. This was not a good place to start for all the hype that we built up, that all the Bears fans built up around Sean Desai. There's a lot to dislike, and it can't be understated just how historically bad this performance was. The Chicago Bears have never, in the modern era, allowed a quarterback to throw 156 quarterback rating on only 20 completions. Matthew Stafford only made 20 completions in this game, but he threw for 321 yards with a QBR of 156.1. This franchise has never let that happen. This is the first time that a QBR of over 150 has happened with 20 passes. In fact, this is like the only second time that a QBR has been over 150 in the entire team's history, with it being Aaron Rodgers, the other one. So now Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers own the Chicago Bears passing defense historically. Dick Butkus, I love that shot when they caught Dick Butkus at the game where he was just had his hand over his face, just looking so disappointed because he couldn't believe what he was watching. We saw the script reverse, and I said this 2 months ago. This could be the first time in a very long time, maybe of all time, that this team's defense is considerably worse than its offense. Now, there are people on Twitter who go, whoa, it's only 14 points. Well, we move the ball a lot, and we'll talk about that on the offense. But on the defensive side of the ball, what did we see that we didn't like? We saw the safeties just didn't show up to play. Eddie Jackson, I will give some credit where credit's due. Eddie Jackson was in the right place at the right time. He's afraid of taking a hit. He is afraid of contact. That could be because he came off that injury. Remember that the year we went to the playoffs, he wasn't in that game against Philadelphia, or he was because he got hurt against the Packers. So he was dealing with an injury when he came back from. Ever since then, he's been playing a little afraid to make contact. He got his payout. He shouldn't be afraid to hit anybody. The front seven was showing its age. Khalil Mack was essentially a non-factor in that game. Akeem Hicks looked good. Roquan Smith was out there. He's got the tiny shoulder pads on. He looks like he doesn't belong on a football field, to be honest with you. But he looked better this game than he did look all last year. He was leveraging his body more. He was pushing offenders more. He was getting to the backfield. Nothing was clicking. It was just disappointing all around the board, but specifically started at the secondary. We neutralized the run game until garbage time because our guys were gassed. Our guys were gassed in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, look, I mean, the secondary is gonna, and I think when you look at Sean Desai, let me just say this regarding the front seven. I mean, I expect them. This is still on paper a talented front seven. I still expect Sean Desai to kind of figure out what went wrong, because we have to keep in mind is that this was also his first rodeo, and so he's gonna go back. He's gonna see, hey, where exactly did I do things right? Where exactly did I do things wrong? But you can't understate that this is a phenomenal L.A. Rams offensive line, okay? But I want to switch over to the secondary and talk about how basically the secondary outside of Jalen Johnson, Tashawn Gibson, Eddie Jackson, there's not really any true NFL caliber starting defensive backs that kind of make offensive coordinators and opposing players go and be like, okay, so this is the guy I'm have to face this week. Look, I like Kendall Wilder and guys like Duke Shelley. I'm all for giving the young guys a chance, but that's just reality. When you look at Eddie Jackson, I mean, Eddie's instincts have certainly shown up on tape, but also when you look at Eddie Jackson, I mean, the one touchdown to Van Jefferson, that's just a mistake that you can't make. I think what's happened is when we look at modified practice rules all across the league, teams just aren't able to tackle as much as they used to in practice. The physicality of practices has toned down. And so tackling is just something that's sloppy. But with that said, I mean, if you're a guy going into year 5 making whatever, $14-15 million a year, whatever his cap hit is, you need to be able to bring the ball carrier down. When we get away from the technique and the fundamentals and stuff, you talk about scheme-wise. I mean, the Bears didn't appear to show a lot of fancy disguises and coverages and blitz. And even if they did, it just means that Matthew Stafford's just such a damn smart player that he was basically able to figure out the Bears defense. That's ultimately, I think, what happened. We talked about the cover 2 look. I think what has to happen is you might just have to go back to playing a cover one defense where essentially all you're doing is having 8 guys in the box in order to have Eddie Jackson back there roaming and be center fielder, because these cornerbacks last night made it clear they need more help than anyone imagined, and that's Jalen Johnson included. So everyone was just like, let's do cover 2, but cover 1's clearly the way to go. And hey, I'm just going to throw this out there. The reason I'm throwing cover 1 out there is because the Rams do not have a top tier number 1 wide receiver. I mean, there's the Bears this season. They're set to face guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams is on the schedule. Those are the guys that you're absolutely going to have to game plan for. The Rams have a trio of really good receivers with Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, as well as Robert Woods, but there's no number 1 wide receiver that makes you go, okay, we're absolutely going to have to scheme for this guy this week.
The fact that we're playing the Arizona Cardinals, thank you for reminding me, is absolutely terrifying, and it should be to every single Chicago Bears fan. This team will get dominated. Like I said, for weeks, we are playing the best of the best in passing games in this league. And if week 1 is an indicator of how our defense is going to play against the best of the best, we can basically write this season off. I don't care if it's week 1. I've seen enough to go, okay, yeah, I'm going to question just about everything. Now, I want to give some positive takeaways from what we saw. Kendall Vilder looked a lot better than I thought he would compared to what I saw in the preseason. He almost, he was about this much away from making a fantastic interception. He just kind of lost momentum, but he was in the right place at the right time. He read the offense perfectly well. Roquan Smith continues to read play calls, offense fantastically. And here's the one thing I want to say that I noticed during the game was every time there was a mistake, every time the Rams were able to make a chunk play, Roquan Smith was running up to guys and pointing out on his hand. He was telling them, you made a mistake here. So obviously Roquan knows this defense. He is the shot caller here. He is the leader on this defense. It just seems like guys don't know it yet. It legitimately seems like there are defenders, or defensive backs, and maybe even Tayshaun Gibson, because that was Gibson's fault, by the way. You know, we're all sharing the meme of everybody that was like, oh, there's 4 guys, but Cooper Kupp is 15 yards in front of them. That wasn't Eddie Jackson's fault. Eddie Jackson was in the right place at the right time. And Dan Orlovsky was like, oh, no, it was just Matt Stafford looking off Gibson. No, it wasn't. Gibson was literally just facing the wrong direction. He didn't know where to go. The simple zone concept, I'm sure you're aware. Once the wide receiver passes the cornerback in the zone, it's then the safety's obligation to keep up with that man. That did not happen. It didn't happen at all that entire game. It just didn't. So there was obvious miscommunication. And the only thing that points to is Sean Desai. That starts and ends with the defensive coordinator. You cannot make any excuses for players unless you go, wait, you're a teacher, right? Teach them. Like when somebody fails a test, you blame the kid? No, you should blame the teacher because obviously they didn't teach it right. Like, to a certain extent, when you're working every single day, it's your full-time job. There's obviously something going wrong and something going on that's wrong in that scenario. So week 1 hopefully gets better. Week 2, we're going up against Joe Burrow. We have Jamar Chase. All right, we'll get an opportunity to see how the secondary responds there. The defensive line looked okay. The run game was non-existent for the first 3 quarters, which was great. And then garbage time happened, and our guys lost steam. And the running game picked up. Okay, cool. So we have a good running defense. We have a terrible passing defense. I don't know what else to say. Like, our defense lost us this game.
I mean, let me say this before we kind of get into the offense here. Number 1, your safety is always going to be your last line of defense. That's just how things go. So when Cooper Kupp's playing past these guys like Kendall Vildor, what needs to happen is that's on to Sean Gibson, even in terms of like whose assignment is going to be. It's on to Sean Gibson because quite frankly, your safeties need. The Bears showed cover 2 multiple times last night. Like I said a moment ago, the safeties are supposed to come over and help the cornerbacks, which unfortunately was just not happening enough. And by the way, that was also that one throw that was to Sean Gibson's side of the field, which is the left side of the field. It was not towards Eddie Jackson's side of the field, which is the right side of the field. And so ultimately, like, it is to Sean Gibson's fault. Okay. Getting into the offense here, I mean, this was an intriguing game depending on who you talk to. And the reason I say depending on who you talk to is because everyone talks about how the bar for Bears fans has been set so low. Bears fans have set the bar so low for offense. They are willing and prepared to say, oh my God, we had 8 possessions, controlled the ball for 35 minutes, got into Rams territory 6 times. Hey, the first drive of the game, we got to the red zone, which, by the way, the first drive of the game should have ended in a touchdown, and it was because of 2 plays, the David Montgomery run and the Khalil Herbert return. That's about it. But Bears fans have set the bar so low for offense. They're willing to take 14 points. They're willing to take multiple missed attempts on 4th down where the Bears failed to convert as progress. Now, I looked at next gen stats, by the way. Let me give you some numbers. And this is just goes to show how bad last night's offensive performance was, even though there were flashes of the Bears supposedly making progress. Which, by the way, when you're in year 4 with an offensive guru, I'm not really sure what kind of progress is being made when you're on your 4th starting quarterback. Dalton threw the ball 38 times last night. He had 27 completions. Guess how many of those passes traveled past the 10-yard line or the first down marker? Only
0.
So I saw on next gen stats just one of them. So
1. I was guessing 0.
Yeah, so one of them went past 10 yards. And I know everyone's going to sit here and this whole debate is going to come up about, is it the quarterback or is it the coach? It's been very clear that when you're running a 4-receiver set in the red zone and it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, or you're inside the 20-yard line, and what's happening is that your play caller calls a play, and what do? You have 3 guys running short of the sticks and only 1 guy running a 6 or 7-yard route, and it's like a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. That's not on these players. That's one, it's bad execution, but the biggest thing of all is it's just bad play design all around. And guess what? You mentioned this a moment ago. I mean, the thought that the run defense is great and the pass defense sucks. Well, it's the same theme on the offense. The passing game sucks under Andy Dalton. It's very apparent because he's not explosive. He can't hit the throws in this offense that require you to go deep to short. Okay, the short throws in this offense and the check down are literally built in as a last resort. But anyways, the point is that the passing game sucks, but the running game is good for the Bears.
And I feel bad for David Montgomery because this entire game, the storyline is going to be about Andy Dalton. It's about the defense, and we're completely overlooking the fact that David Montgomery had one of, if not his best first half of football in his entire career. He absolutely broke all of my expectations for what I was going to see this year, what I wanted to see. My expectations were here, and he went up and above. It was fantastic to see. He looks quicker. He looks stronger. We had issues about his late field speed because he kept getting tracked down by speedier secondaries. That wasn't an issue. He looked like he was just as fast as the other guys. He's chopping his feet more. He's bouncing around more. He looks like an elite running back. He looks like a top 5 back up there right now. But we're not going to be talking about that because there's so many other storylines on this team, right? And you're completely right about the passing game. It's frustrating when you have one of the fastest wide receiver core in this league. And the whole concept with that is to stretch the field, is to get your guys way downfield really quickly. Maybe one of them's open on a one-on-one, or if not, it opens up the underneath. Okay, cool. Well, the Rams defense was giving you the underneath the entire night because they were afraid of your speed. Awesome. That's cool. And they were begging you to run the ball, like Chris Collinsworth said. Okay, awesome, cool. So what do? Well, we use our speed to our advantage, and we run a bunch of hitch routes because the defenders are going to be a couple steps off. So they're going to be on their heels. So the second our guy breaks for 5 at 7 yards, immediately turns around Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton has it right there, right? Perfectly. Perfect timing. The offense was in sync, which I think is something that people need to notice, was there weren't a lot of mistakes when it came down to quarterback-wide receiver communication. We've seen that with the Mitch Trubisky era. That happened a lot. I didn't see any of that this game. So that's a plus. That's a positive. We got first downs. We have first downs to celebrate. When was the last time we had first downs that we were excited about? We had 24 first downs in this game. We were, 5 for 11 and third downs? That's under 50%, but who cares? That's 5 third down conversions. Completely different than last year. This offense took steps in the right direction. I don't think any Bears fan who watched the game last night can go, no, this offense looks worse. It looks better. It legitimately does. But when you take an F and knock it up 2 to 3 percentages, it's still an F. It's still not going to make the passing grade. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And by the way, who are the 2 people that had touchdowns on the Bears side? Well, it was David Montgomery and Mr. Justin Fields, right? He was out there for 2-3 plays that all netted in positive yards, and one of them ended up in a touchdown. So I don't want to hear any quarterback competitions for how the rookies are doing. Okay, Justin Fields is 100% completion rate. He already has a touchdown, and he has a perfect passer rating at the moment. So I don't need to hear any comparisons about how Mac Jones is doing better than Justin Fields right now, because Justin Fields is undefeated right now. He's the best quarterback in the NFC North by metrics. But no, it's very clear that this offense was afraid to take shots. And if I'm being completely honest with you, as usually my conspiracy theory, is because I don't think Andy Dalton wanted to throw the ball deep, because he knew that if he did and it netted an interception, he was going to be on the sideline for the rest of the game. So he's playing for his job, which means, hey, if I can chip away at this defense all game long and, maybe get some yards on the stat book that make me look good, okay, I can do that. Will that win us games? No. Will it keep Andy Dalton in a position to play more and start more? Maybe. But Bears fans have to keep calling him out. Bears fans have to keep being loud, because eventually they're going to put Justin in. And after this, I don't even see why we wait till week 3 or week 4. I think we should just give him a shot next week, see how he performs.
Yeah, little fun fact here, because I have ESPN's game book kind of pulled up in front of me, but Justin Fields has a higher QBR than Andy Dalton at 78.2, and he's also got a higher just overall rating at 87.5. Now, you're right, progress was being made. Last point I'm going to make is this. I mean, we're used to, look, the Bears did have a dink and dunk offense last night. Let's just not lie to ourselves. But I think that Andy Dalton averaging 5.5 yards per attempt, not necessarily bad by any means, but if you want to talk about progress and give credit where credit is due, certainly, was this the offensive performance any of us wanted? Absolutely not. Was it a step in the right direction that's going to allow you to go ahead and say, hey, maybe with the Bengals coming to town here in a couple days, what will kind of happen is, because the Bengals are not, I watched the Bengals game, and we'll get into it in a couple days here when we preview that, but I'm going to say this. I mean, the Bengals are not the defense that the Rams are in any way, shape, or form. But ultimately, maybe the Bears just need to play a weaker defense like the Bengals to instill some confidence in the entire offense that, hey, we can actually do something. We can kind of knock people off. With side note, I have the Bears going 3-2 in the first 5 games. I do think Detroit as well as Las Vegas are going to be easy wins. And then I don't know, maybe the Bears are going to be tough and gritty and surprise everyone in week 6 and knock the Packers off, because the Packers got smoked by Jameis Winston, which if you had told me that was going to happen, I would have been like, yeah, you're crazy. But dude,
I'm not surprised. I think Jameis Winston was criminally underrated. I think he was a fantastic quarterback in a terrible system with a terrible surrounding cast. I think he proved it.
So I'm going to throw this out there before we get into our final point. I think Jameis Winston is a classic example of all a young quarterback needs to do, that has all the tools and the athleticism and everything need to play the game at a high level. All he needs to do is sit 1 year in a good situation in a functional system surrounded by the right pieces for him to really learn, see the mental side of the game, and then completely take off if he gets another chance. And the reason I bring that up is because I just have a sneaky suspicion, and see, we know each other so well that you know where I'm going with this. I have a sneaky suspicion that when Brian Daboll gets a head coaching job next year, we're going to see the exact same thing out of Mitch Trubisky. But last thing here before we get out of here, and we can take like 5 to 6 minutes to discuss this. I mean, Matt basically said, Matt Nagy, he's like, yeah, we're good with whatever we have in place for Justin Fields. Now, I said this 2 months ago that there was going to be a point where Justin was going to show enough that whatever the original plan was, they were going to have to kind of deviate. The Bears would have to deviate from this supposed like Kansas City Patrick Mahomes model. And they're calling it the Kansas City Patrick Mahomes model because that's what it is on paper. But the Bears can't replicate that entire situation to a T. So what I'm saying here is this is that I think Matt wants to play Justin badly, but ultimately, you know that Justin kind of struggles with the mental side of the game in terms of doing stuff like getting the ball out quickly. I think that's one of the big knocks right now, and you absolutely just can't expose and let your offensive line get beat. Andy Dalton was getting the ball out in 2.1 seconds last night. So he was getting the ball out quick, which is what you would expect from a 13-year veteran. But ultimately, Justin's going to play sooner than expected still, especially if the losses keep piling up and the Bears don't do anything on offense, okay? But ultimately, I mean, what do you think the plan here is moving forward?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you what they're doing. I seriously don't know what they're thinking. Using Justin Fields as like a wildcat option, like a Taysom Hill option, like they're acting like Andy Dalton is Drew Brees. Look, that's cute when your quarterback is one of the best in the league and can win games. It's not cute when your quarterback can't win games because everybody wants to see the guy that they're putting in to make the cute plays take every down instead of the guy who's losing. So I don't know what the plan is. I think the Bengals defense is a wonderful opportunity to let Justin Fields experience an NFL caliber game in the regular season and allow him the opportunity to get into a rhythm. It's clear that the offense is behind Justin based on the reaction to his touchdown. Everybody was up. Everybody was screaming. Everybody was cheering. Everybody was happy. And it hurt me watching Justin on the sidelines. It looked like he was talking to himself. And he looked like he wanted to get out there so badly. It looked like I've never seen him look like that before. This is his big moment. This is his first NFL game. And if I see one more metric on a broadcast about Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and how they had to wait to get playing time, Andy Dalton is not Alex Smith, and he's definitely not Brett Favre. So I don't understand these comparisons. I don't understand this model. I don't understand this metric. But I hope we see him next week. If not next week, then the week after. And if not the week after, then the week after that. And if not the week after that, then the week after that week. So I want to see him sooner than later. All of Chicago wants to see him sooner than later. He wants to play sooner than later. And really, it's just kind of up to Nagy, and really, I think it's up to Dalton.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a quick note before we get out of here regarding Justin standing on the sideline. What was interesting is that, so this is going to sound really weird, but he's a quarterback. So quarterbacks have the green stickers on the back of their helmets, and linebackers have it too, by the way, which basically allows them to hear whatever's going on with the headset. Now, it's interesting because what was one of the big things that Justin Fields needed to master when he first got to the Bears was learning how to call plays in the huddle, knowing that some of the plays in the Bears offense have like 22, 23, 24 words in them for just one play. It's just that much verbiage. There's also a lot of cadences in this offense compared to Ohio State, where there were only 3 to 4 cadences. And Justin himself kind of admitted that, hey, the verbiage, the play call, it's all an adjustment. So the reason I go back to him always having the helmet on, despite standing on the sideline, a lot of people are going to pass it up as, oh, well, he was doing that because Matt Nagy said that he could go into the game at any moment. No, that's not why he was doing it. He was doing it to get a grasp on the offense and learn and see what the play calls were, as well as be on the chalk on the sideline, kind of just observing and saying, hey, how is Andy essentially relaying these things into the huddle? That's really what was going on. Now, regarding him starting, like I said, it's going to happen, but you also have to put into question. I mean, I seriously don't know what Matt Nagy's doing. I can't tell anyone. For those of you that tweet at me on Twitter, hey, when is Justin Fields starting? Like, I can't tell you guys. But what I can tell you is this, is that if this team continues to struggle and just limp to the finish line, Matt's going to want to start Andy Dalton because he knows that, yeah, I have jobs. I'm sorry, Matt's going to want to start Justin Fields because Matt knows, yeah, I may have job security lined up through the end of 2022. And right now, it's just best for me to see what I have because if you're not a asset at the quarterback position, the only thing you are is a liability.
Yeah, I don't think you could have said it any better. It's incredibly smart. Completely whiffed over my head. He could have just been talking and saying the plays out loud to himself, and at least getting that repetition of saying the plays and getting the mental motions of it and the muscle memory. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much to speculate, but again, we were just going to have to watch, struggle, hopefully not painfully, through it as the Bears move on at home and take on Joe Burrow and these revitalized Cincinnati Bengals. But we'll come back later this week with a preview after we get some chance to watch the tape, see some things we liked, see some things we didn't like on both sides of the ball, Cincinnati and Chicago. So make sure you stay tuned for that.
Absolutely, guys. We're going to get out of here, but bear down and stay safe. Peace out.